Welcome to Business Spotlight. I'm joined today by Alex Bailey, who is the co-founder of Bailey and French. And I'm particularly looking forward to this conversation because I know that Alex and her company are really interested in people and their development, everything from the recruitment stage into large international organizations, but also into well-being, professional development, training, and things of that nature, leadership. So there's a lot to cover there, Alex.
There
Welcome
is.
to the
Thank you,
call.
Gavin.
Well, let's start with that remit because it's very, very broad. Where do you prefer working? Why is it so broad? I suppose would be my
That's
initial
a really good
question. Yeah,
question. Yeah, thank you for asking that. I think, our vision is around humanizing the world of work, and I think the focus in on the human aspect of work is more important now than ever. It was a vision that I set up in 2019, actually, having had the business for 5 years and seeing where it was going, was that we really noticed that where we were working at scale across large global organizations, all markets, all industries, we were really able to focus in on what the universal human connection was at the heart of all organizations. And so
yeah,
that's really what comes into our programs, whether it's about well-being, whether it's about performance, whether it's about getting through a large transformational change or regulatory pressures. It's always about focusing in on what's the human aspect here, how can we help people be more human on
Hmm.
purpose in a way that really helps them perform well, feel well, and be at their very best as much as possible in this really crazy world that we're living in.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it makes perfect sense as well to focus on the individual and the human beings. But to what extent do you find that the corporates buy into that at the outset, or do you find that you're kind of educating them in some sense or coaching them to say, look, your people matter more than possibly you think you do? Or is it a case that you're working with the organizations that already get that? How
I
would
would
you?
say 10 years ago, I think it was like that. But I think now actually we're working with leaders and teams who do get that totally.
Yeah,
It's more about the how. So how do you do that at pace and at scale? Those are the two things that people struggle with the most is they've got an intervention, they've got a workshop, they can do something, but how
yeah,
do they make that really impactful across the whole organization? And what kind of levers can you use? Because some of the traditional approaches now in this future world of work are really being impacted, particularly by dispersed ways of working, but also by the advent of such significant change in AI and technology. So it's really about how do we come at this kind of engaging all our people around new changes
hmm,
in a way that feels right, that is easy, that is slick, that doesn't feel kind of clunky and have loads of challenges and barriers because people
hmm,
just got so much going on. Cognitive overload is extensive in all organizations because no one's got
no,
tons of resource or money and budget to throw around, so
no.
most people are very, very busy and at capacity. So when you're at that point, what's the one or two key things that you can do that will make a biggest difference to where you, the team, and the organization is going?
Yeah. And it's interesting to hear that, you're successfully doing this at scale. And I've worked with individuals, I've worked with leaders in both personal development and training. And one of the key challenges that I found, obviously at a far smaller scale, is first of all, you've got to communicate the message and get the people to buy into the idea that, that they are developing their training. And people obviously come at this from, they hear messages differently depending on their communication profile. And then you've got, as you suggested, the restrictions on budget and time. So are there any key elements that you bring to this to sort of ensure that the work that you're doing has longevity, it sticks, it lasts, the impact, the changes that you begin to witness in teams and individuals is lasting? What would you say the key elements and ingredients were to that?
I think choice of channel. So as you mentioned, communication, it's so important now, but we're
Yeah,
bombarded all the time in work and outside of work too.
yeah,
So I think sometimes we struggle with thinking that because we've already shared something that everyone is on board and they get it.
yeah,
And actually, if they are having a full day, that it may have completely gone over their head and
yeah.
missed the communication altogether, even if there's a perfectly worded PowerPoint presentation with all the detail in it that they haven't
Yeah,
yet read in their inbox that's got maybe
yeah,
200 emails in.
yeah,
So for me, it's about multi-channel. So
yeah.
it's meeting people where they're at. And that's a very human basis as well, is kind of really thinking about where is that individual. Just because the organization wants to communicate and perhaps change things or excite people about a new product or a customer service, then we've still got to work out where are people right now. What are they focused on right now? Are they fixing something big? Have they been working on a project for 2 years? You know, where is it that their heads are at right now? And how can we implement and use that really great kind of opportunity, innovation to change
Yeah,
things and move the organization forward, but bring it to reality in their world? And I think sometimes we spend so much, certainly I've seen in my corporate life, but in all the clients that we work with,
yeah,
organizations spend a lot of time simplifying messages for the C-suite and for the exec teams and for some of their senior leaders. They'll condense things down. Everything will go into an executive summary. It'll be all bullet pointed and highlighted. But we forget that the organization has even less time than they do to read things.
yeah,
So actually, we should be doing that for everybody. And giving someone a 60-page PowerPoint presentation and asking them to decipher it, translate it, and apply it
yeah,
into their role, it's just unrealistic. So bringing people into conversation is really critical,
yeah,
giving people modes of channels of when they can actually digest information. So
yeah.
not just one off, but giving them multiple opportunities, but multi-channels as well. So some people like to skip through videos and hear people talk about things. Others like to read it in an article or a piece of information. And some people just really want to discuss everything. So it's about having all those different options available to people in their own time and meeting them where they're at.
I mean, there's a lot of psychology in what you do. I know you bring a lot to that. Do you find yourself being a facilitator between the communication, the conversation between the leadership team, the executive team, and the individuals? So the messaging that comes from the executive team, for example, possibly helping them tailor that so that it hits the individuals at their point of need that need to engage, and equally to those people who are engaging, being supported, being developed, that they understand why they would want to buy into this. Do you find yourself kind of pointing in two directions when you're setting these sessions and these interventions up?
So I would say more than two directions. I would say multiple
Multiple
directions because
directions.
yeah, what we do is we really support people to engage with whatever's
Yeah,
going on, the people strategy, the big
yeah,
changes, and we do that in lots of different ways. But one of the things we do is try to bring everybody closer together to have really good conversations, because what often happens is people have different conversations in different parts of the business, but not often together. So that cross-functional, cross-departmental, cross-team, cross-leadership layer conversation is actually where we make a lot of meaning and we make sense of what's going on and we apply it into our daily work. And without that connectivity,
yeah.
lots of things will be launched perfectly with a beautiful campaign and just fall flat with no impact. So no, it's really about recognizing the humanness in that, what people are ready to hear, what language makes sense to them, how can they actually work it through and try some things and try it and be okay to fail, have a safe path back, have people with them, being able to find their anchors in what they know is true and what is meaningful to them, but try and test new things out without fearing failure. So a lot of different complexities coming into that.
And perhaps added to that list, maybe what they're prepared to commit to as well, because quite often training and learning and development without a commitment to follow up action, it can be academic and wasted, can't it? So, very often when I'm working with individuals, says, okay, you've heard all of this stuff, you've taken on board all this information, you've identified all these areas that you want to act on, but which is the main thing that you're going to commit to? So there's going to be a change and a development, moving forwards in
Personal action plans are
personal
probably
action
one of the
plan.
best
Yeah,
ways of following up with any kind of group or
yeah,
team training and learning, so that people can make sense of that. And we're getting more clients ask us actually for the support with that, around that personal action planning and
makes
the
sense.
personal conversation afterwards, or
Yeah,
small group coaching,
yeah,
where people really are trying to understand what the new thing is because they want to.
yeah.
Um,
That's
but
great.
people need help
Yeah,
because our brains are so overloaded. There's so much going on, and we can't do it all on our own. That's a really important thing that is standing out a lot at the
yeah,
moment. We'll be expecting lots of people to do things, and because of the dispersed ways of working over the last few years, people have been working in isolation very well for some time post-pandemic. But now, actually, the advent of bigger change is really requiring much greater collaboration, and
yeah.
people are struggling to understand that they actually need to look sideways and understand what everyone else around them is doing, even if they can't physically see them,
Yeah.
and recognize that we have to go together.
I think that's a really important point. Alex, you said it was 5 years before this whole person-focused centered approach really kicked in and took your passion. Why? What was it for you that made you realize this is an area that you wanted to focus on?
Yeah, again, another good question, because the kind of first 5 years of the business, or
Yeah,
6 years of the business, it was really important to me that we were very client focused. We were focusing on client needs, client problems, client challenges,
yeah,
that we didn't kind of come out and like, oh, right, we've got this wonderful solution, who wants to kind of buy it? It's
yeah,
much more about really understanding the client's needs. And we tried lots of different ways of articulating that. But yeah, I actually went to a big conference in New York for 4 days, and I hardly slept. It was just full of all of my absolute heroes and icons in the world of leadership and psychology. And I was just bombarded with all the kind of latest ideas and thinking around what had happened over the last kind of 15, 20 years in my career in that space. So much
yeah,
advancement had happened, and I was seeing leaders really stepping up. And it was just really that point where I recognized that actually, because of the way we'd been working across so many different markets and industries, that the one common thing across everything was our humanness. And
yeah,
I think, I guess it must have come from kind of a lot of personal travel. I've lived in a lot of places in my 40 odd years. And I used to look, when I was moving around, I used to very much look for the differences and be excited about, oh, look, this is a new thing about this new culture that I'm in, or the people I'm with.
mm,
But actually, over time, and as I've grown older, I've seen more and more of the commonality of humanness and what we really care about and what we really want in the world of work. And it suddenly just struck me that actually that's a very human thing, is that we're looking for this interconnectedness, this interdependence as a living species on this planet. And
yeah,
that is really important. Sometimes we forget, this planet is full of different living species, and we are one of those. We are part of that ecosystem on a planet,
yeah.
and that there is something about us as a species in our ability to really work well together that is absolutely paramount. And I think it's forgotten, and with the advance of so much innovation in the world, all happening at the same time, we've
Yeah.
got to be much better at recognizing it.
I think that's a really important point. So one final thing for you, Alex, you mentioned there about going to New York and seeing these icons, these heroes. You've obviously got what I would call a growth mindset. You look for opportunities and interconnectedness. Before when we first spoke, in our first exchange, you mentioned that you had business coaches of your own and other coaches of your own. Um, for the benefit of the viewer, can you share with us why you think it's important, this aspect of personal development, why it's important to have a coach, why it's important to listen to what other people have got to say in the industry and take things on board? Because it's clearly a driver for you.
It is. There's a couple of things, yeah. So I guess if I go back to kind of my life story,
Yeah,
as you know, as a child, I'm part of a military family. I've been moved around a lot, and so my traveling started at a very young age and being
yeah,
in lots of different environments. And what that means is you don't have this kind of core friendship group that you can rely on all the time. I had no roots anywhere, so everywhere I went, a new place, I had to relearn the rules of engagement, how people were, what was important to people. And I think when you're learning that at a young age, constantly looking for almost acceptance, belonging in any kind of grouping, community, school, um, and I think that it becomes very, very obvious that you need to be ready to listen to others and look at what they've got to share about their environment. And I think that's really stuck with me, because then when I started on my journey through into to my studies, my education, and my career, I was traveling a lot through different stages of that as well. And I think that really showed me that I was constantly looking for insights, all that kind of insights and expertise of how do I get on around here? How do I quickly develop relationships that can be trusted and bonded, even though I haven't known someone for 5, 10 years?
yeah.
If they haven't worked with me before, what's going to matter most when I first speak to them, when they first have that engagement with me, that means that we're going to collaborate and work well together into the future? Because you just can't do anything on your own. And I learned that at a very young age. I always needed the people around me. And so since then, yes, I've had coaches at various stages of my career. And they've, actually, I've had a vast array of different types of coaches and support. And that has been a really significant impact on me. So I've had voice coaches. I have, in order to project my voice in meetings where, I didn't feel I was being heard. I've had therapists and counselors. I have had coaches who have helped me on strategy. I've had coaches who've helped me with team development. I've had coaches who've helped me with my personal approach to life. And also then on the periphery of that, I've had a whole bunch of other people in my web of support who are mentors, friends, yoga teachers, fitness instructors, all kinds of people who actually all tap into the same space of that personal development, because it overlaps into really developing as a human, doesn't it? In terms of, I've got much more to learn and to give in this world. So I need to be the very best I can be every day.
And there's a really powerful message there for all those people that feel isolated as founders and managing directors and owners of businesses and on their own, and very eloquently shared and explained as well. Alex, thank you very much for your time today. It's been fascinating talking to you.
Oh, thank you, Gavin. I've really enjoyed it.
Enjoy your trip to Nashville. Have a great time.
Thank you.